quickly complete the deck on this front, as well as another small topic which was pending from yesterday, which is integration options. After that, the remaining time would be given. So we have about 15 minutes, but today, rather than 2:30, I think it will be 3 o'clock when we will get started with our case studies. Okay? So let's get going. So in this lesson, we want to introduce you to Azure Monitor. What is Azure Monitor? Log Analytics, Azure Workbooks, which is again for dashboard purposes, and Azure Data Explorer, which comes into play when we talk about big data analytics. So without any further delay, let me bring your attention back to this whiteboard. There we have given you a quick intro to what is Azure Monitor. So Azure Monitor is a go-to solution if you want to understand how your application is behaving. It could be in terms of cost, operation excellence, performance, security, or high availability. So it helps you maximize the availability and performance of your application. Now the question is, how does it do that? It helps you collect and analyze information. What does it help me to collect and analyze? Metrics, which are basically numbers, and logs, which are basically your messages. It could be telemetry data, it could be events, it could be diagnostics logs, it could be anything, right? So Azure Monitor gives you an effective monitoring strategy that helps you understand in detail about how your application is behaving. So that's exactly what we have written here. So if you need to get details about your health, performance, and availability, you go to Azure Monitor. So now the first question is, what are the capabilities of Azure Monitor? So I told you that it can help you with numbers, metrics, which means if there is any threshold set for any given resource, and if that threshold is met, I will notify you through an alert. Monitor and visualize your metrics. Metrics are numbers that will help you understand about the health, performance, and operations of your application. Logs. So basically, we dump all this information in a place called Log Analytics Workspace. And I can query this workspace using a language called KQL. That's what you see here. So any activities, any diagnostics information, telemetry information can be dumped in this place called Log Analytical Workspace. And then accordingly, you can configure your alerts and actions. Alerts are notifications which come into play when a particular event or a condition is met, right? So these are the three capabilities. Now the question is, where is it going to collect this information from? So we have all these layers. We have application, operating system, Azure resources, subscription, tenant, custom sources, which could be your hybrid environment, on-premise environment. So how is it going to collect? Basically, you have to install Azure Monitor Agent. So in olden days, we used to call it as WAD or LAD. WAD stands for Windows Diagnostics Extension. LAD stands for Linux Diagnostics Extension. So basically, these agents would collect platform logs, performance data, users, and performance. So like I said, where am I dumping all this information? In Log Analytics Workspace. What is a workspace? It's basically like your event hub, where you collect all the information. How am I going to query this? KQL. A simple example looks something like this. So here, if I want to monitor my environment, I will just go back here, home, monitor. Here, in monitor, you would see three things: metrics, logs, alerts. Metrics, basically the numbers. Logs, all your telemetry data. And then alerts is where you're gonna go ahead and get notifications. For example, in this, I want to define metrics for a workload called Linux 02. So here I can see from the drop down, here if I want to know CPU consume, CPU credits remaining, disk data, network, all the numbers. As of now, the resolution is off. Even if I select, you won't see any information. So alerts. Alerts basically comes with three sections. We have to configure something called action group. For example, let's go to action groups here, create an action group. I will call this as action group 51673 AG. And then notifications. How do you want to get notified? I want to get an email. Okay. name would be hey, email to administrator. Okay, and here we're talking about who are you gonna email it to? Sorry, resource manager role. Okay, I can select this one here, which would give me to publish the email address. So I'm just saying, hey, notify me when something goes wrong to this particular email address. So this is what I would do. First step, actions, I'm not taking any action. So I just need notification. Action is like I can run a code. See here, Azure function. I can select the Azure function, the piece of code that I want to execute when that particular alert is generated. Or I can forward it to Event Hub, or I can forward this alert to an ITSM solution like ServiceNow. So all these things are possible. As of now, I'm not doing that. I'm saying, hey, just help me with the notification. Okay. So action group. So the moment I do this, what will happen behind the screen is I will get an email saying that you have been added to this action group. Let me go back to my inbox. Let me refresh and I'll show you that. It will take about a minute's time, but you'll get an email saying that, hey, you have been added to this action group. Now let me show you how to create your alerts. So you go to alert rules, you say create alert rule.
Hey, Harry, quick.
Yeah.
Do we have to provision a storage account in the back of every metrics we create?
That's a very good question. By default, not necessary, but if you want to, what do you call it, control where your data is residing, yes. So by default, platform provided account is used behind the screen to store your information.
Okay, and so if it is by default, then I don't have any control in which region it gets provisioned, isn't it?
Exactly. I mean, while creating, if you're talking about just the collection, while creating log analytical workspace, you still select the region. So you still have the control, but you don't have the control on everything that we are talking about, like the messages. So yeah, guys, 5167380 action group, you have been added to the action group message. This came up. So which means going forward, whenever that particular alert that we are going to talk about is generated, it will notify me. So I'll just say apply here, which means I'm creating an alert tool for a resource called Linux 02 virtual machine. Next. See here, hey, what do you want me to report you on? Do you want me to report you when a particular log is generated, or do you want me to report you when a threshold for a particular metric is met, or do you want me to report you on your resource utilization? So what do you want me to report you on? I'm selecting activity. What kind of activity? Currently the virtual machine is off. So when I power this virtual machine on, I should get notified. Check this out. Whenever the activity log has a category with administrative, signal name start virtual machine, this alert will be generated. Then I click action. Action is what? Select an action group. Remember, we created an action group. What was this action group? Send a notification email to habibbsc@gmail.com. Details. I'm gonna create this as 51673 alert rule. This is for testing purposes. Review and create. So now the alert rule is created. What will happen now? If I go back to home, virtual machines, alert rule created on the top, I select this virtual machine, I turn this virtual machine on. So I'm starting this virtual machine. So what will happen? That activity is created, right? Start virtual machine, and then with administrative privilege. So automatically I should receive an email saying that, hey, this particular VM has been turned on by this particular guy, and here you go. So I will get about 3 alerts since the virtual machine started. Okay, let's wait for 1 minute and you will see the alerts. So basically, like we said, what we did as of now is we monitored an action rather than a log, and then we set up an alert. The action in the alert was to notify me. Just give me a thumbs up if you're following me so far. So similarly, if I'm talking about querying the log data, which I've collected, I'll go to this website. aka.ms/LA demo. So this is the website. You can see the website in the chat box. You just need to have an account. Anybody can access this. Okay. From home, there, I can go to queries. I can search for virtual machine queries, provided I don't know how to write KQL queries. Okay. If you're an advanced security architect who's dealing with solutions like Sentinel and Defender, you would be in and out working on KQL. It's more closer to how your SQL programming language is, right? So now coming back, I want to learn about the CPU usage trends, how the CPU is working. There's a double click on it that would load the code, right? Just click the run button. So queries are running against your environment, and it will tell you how many virtual machines. All these colored lines indicate a virtual machine. And then it is showing you the CPU utilization trend in the last 24 hours. So similarly, hey, I want to learn if there were any events that were implemented or that were reported. Top 10 events is what I want to see. Here, I don't see any events. Let's go with event by reported errors. As of now, it says, hey, that there is no error reported in your test environment. So if I just select this clear, and if I click on show me details about the shutdown virtual machine, okay, there are no virtual machines which have been shut down in the last 10 minutes. So no virtual machines turned on even in the last 150 minutes, which means approximately 2.5 hours there are no virtual machines. Okay, but I want to know the top 10 virtual machines with respect to your CPU utilization. This we should get. See here, we will get. So this is exactly what we're talking about. So LA demo, log analytical demo environment, is an environment given for customers to go ahead and check what tables are available, where the data is associated, and then how you can query that data in the tables using your own query or the pre-existing queries. This is exactly what we have. So now that we understand a bit of what log analytical workspace is, let's understand how to set this up. In order to start collecting your information, first step would be to install a monitoring agent on the sources, right? So set up your log analytical workspace. Step 1. This is where you will start with your location. Connect your data sources to a log analytical workspace. Now, when you do this behind the scenes, an agent is getting installed. Once the agent is installed, verify the connection is connected to your workspace, and then see if the logs are being forwarded. These are the 4 steps which we do. So now that we have some basic knowledge, let me refresh my. See here, guys. I've received an email. Azure Monitor Alert 51673 Azure Alert Room was activated on Linux 02 virtual machine. It's an administrative category, and it clearly tells you which resource is it, what level is it, what was the operation, saying that, hey, the virtual machine has been powered on. This is what I've told you, right? So first message was you have been added to the action group. Second message is associated with your action rule. So let's pause here. Let's go back to the tech and let's complete what we have here waiting for us. We saw this. Azure Monitor is a bundle solution, which means this is a one-stop solution to collect all your metrics and logs, analyze them through solutions like metric analytics or log analytics, and then publish the results using Power BI, workbooks, or views or dashboards. If you need more insights into your containers, into your networks, into your virtual machines, go with Insights. If you want to respond, I just showed you how alerts work. Similarly, we have auto scale. Action options are available to you. and it helps you easily integrate with logic applications or your API solution. So Azure Monitor is like an umbrella of multiple products. All these are different products. For example, MS Office and all the products of MS Office. Where am I collecting the information from? Multiple layers. All these layers is where the data is collected, which we are analyzing. Give me a thumbs up if this screen is making sense, if you are following me so far. So as an architect, the first question or the first question that you should ask your clients is, hey, what kind of data are we looking at? And what kind of monitoring are we enabling? Because each data tier can stream to external different systems, right? You need to prioritize and be deliberate on what data sources you need. For example, if I'm looking at operating system logs, so I need a workspace, I need a diagnostic extension installed in this virtual machine, and then I need a dependency agent if I'm going with virtual machine insights as well. So 3 different agents, right? If I'm looking at Azure subscription data, which is basically your activity logs, Azure monitor logs, and Azure storage archiving information, that process is completely different. So the first question that you need to understand here is, what kind of data are we trying to collect? How do I automate the collection process? So log analytics. Log analytics is a service which allows you to collect and analyze the data. Where is it storing this collected information? In the log analytical workspace. For example, for Linux machines, we collect this logs. For Windows, we collect your events. For agents, we are collecting your heartbeat information, customary logs, alerts, tables, right? All this is available. So what does the workspace provide? A geographical location for data storage. This is where Vijay's question come into play. I said, while creating the logical workspace, you still have to choose the location, right? Data isolation, by granting different users different permissions. This is again done through RBAC. Scope for configuration of settings like pricing, tier, retention, and data capping. So here we are talking about how you want to keep the logs. Do you want to keep logs from all the different layers in a single workspace, or do you want to keep them in separate workspaces? Centralized versus decentralized. Most of the time, I've seen centralized in action. The reason why is because this helps correlation of logs easy, which means when you're troubleshooting, it becomes really easy for you to understand the connection between the components and then the reason for the failure. So that's the most important part. Decentralized, you don't have. Hybrid is the least that I've seen and more complex as well. This one is more for isolation purposes, decentralized. Every department will have its own workspace wherein the department associated resources will keep the logs separated. Now the question is, do you want to go with workspace context or resource context? When I say workspace context, the queries are scoped against all tables in the workspace. When I say resource context, this is particularly for virtual machine or storage account or your web application. So it is targeted to a particular resource group, or a subscription. No problem, Rosh. And then, monitoring logs. Who is each model intended for? If somebody is looking for centralized administration, go with workspace context. If somebody is targeting per application, go with resource context. What does a user requires to view logs? Permission to the workspace, here permission to the resource. What is the scope of the permission? Workspace versus the resource itself. What is a workbook? A workbook is basically a digital canvas which helps you for data analysis. It gives you rich visual reports. In simple terms, it's like a fancy dashboard. That's what it does, right? Workbooks provide flexible canvas for data analysis and then helps you report any problem that it has occurred. So what kind of data is it compatible with? So workbooks works with logs, metrics, Azure Graph API, health, Data Explorer. So these are the sources where you can bring your Azure. And then what kind of visualizations does it support, right? So whenever we're talking about visualization, which means the output, we support text, charts, grids, if I'm not wrong, tiles, and graphs. I think trees are also available, but these are different visualization examples that you can view. So all we have to do is explore the usage of an application, which helps you find the root cause analysis and putting all together that operational information. That's what Azure Books come handy for. Then we have insights. What are insights? If you want to closely monitor a system and identify any performance problems or attacks before it can affect users, go with Azure Insights. So we have insights for application, insights for virtual machines, insights for container, also for networks. So it gives you more in detail visibility, like process-wise, like how much CPU memory is being used, right? If you want to view any logs in real time, or if you want to do analysis for any historical data, Insights is capable of doing all that. So can I call it as an extension to Azure Monitor? Yeah. Can I also call this as an APM? So people call this as APM. APM stands for Application Performance Manager or Management. So it is a solution which offers you this. So Insights provide customized monitoring experience. That's the simplest statement that you can think of. So if you want to understand how your application is performing, how long it's being used, how many users are connecting, how many requests, how many failure rates, the client-server communication, if you want to diagnose it, right? If you want to collect a snapshot of an application analyzed data at any given stage, go with Application Insights. Then finally, we have something called Azure Data Explorer. So basically, when we are talking about big data, where you have humongous amount of data being collected, if you want a simplified tool to perform analytics, to analyze high volumes of data in near real time, so here, highly scalable data exploration service for log and telemetry data, which means big data analytical platform. So it's basically a BDA, big data analytical platform. So by analyzing structured, semi-structured, unstructured data across time series and by using machine learning, your data explorer makes it simple to get insights, to get patterns and trends, to forecast models. All these things is what it does. Hey, can I combine this with Azure Sentinel, which is an analytical solution in Azure Monitor? Yep, it can be done. That's what the diagram also shows you. That's it. So these were the solutions. So we started with Azure Monitor. We saw the sections in Azure Monitor: metrics, logs, alerts. Then we started with log analytics. This is where we went into aka.ms /LA demo. This is the environment which I worked on. Then we have talked about solutions like what are the different dashboards that I can use for viewing data. This is where we have talked about workbooks. And then after this, we have talked about your insights. And finally, we looked into Data Explorer. And while we were talking about logical workspace, we have talked about centralized versus decentralized versus hybrid. From my experience, I've always seen centralized because it helps correlation of logging data. Just give me a thumbs up if you are all following me and if it is all making sense. Thanks, Rishi. Thank you, others. Thanks, Vijay. So, let's complete the last module as well. This is another small module. Shouldn't take more time. We should be done with our communications. Where is it? This was a module from yesterday. Again, another small module. So before we go here, if you go back to the whiteboard and open Experience Whiteboard Day 2 and go to the bottom of it, you will see this. Hey, what do you mean by big data? Right, this is the first statement that I want to start with. Data collected from multiple sources is what we call it as big data. Example, your IoT device like Fitbit or Apple Watch. Example, your self-driving cars. Example, the sensors in your aircraft engine, right? All this data that we are collecting is basically raw, unorganized, right? So we need to organize this data. Like what? Like, hey, is it relational, non-relational, or is it other category, right? In order to get proper context of it, so that we can derive meaningful insights from it, what data scientists do is they do something called ETL or ELT, extract, transform, load, or extract, load, and transform. So this is basically a process. It's a process to align process to this data and orchestrate the data so that you can refine this data. So let me pause here. Let me first help you understand this process. Again, if you're not a data scientist, if you're not a person who's going to deal with data, you won't be bringing in this solution. But in today's time, we are seeing how even for elections here in India and abroad, we see how the public opinion data is used, right? So tools like this can help you understand the emotions of the public. Tools like this can help you understand the rate of your sales. So all these are few examples that comes into play whenever we are talking about big data. Everybody following me so far? Give me a thumbs up. What big data is a simple statement. Why big data is raw, unorganized, and why data scientists are aligning processes. So one such tool which helps them align process to define the data is Azure Data Factory. In simple terms, Azure Data Factory helps you create pipelines. So what are pipelines? Data-driven workflows. What do? They transform your data. ETL and ELT is what we do. So how does it start? It starts with ingestion, which means collect and collect the data. Then it's going to transform the data, which is where we are talking about creating data flows, controlling those flows, scheduling those flows, sending those flows to a solution called Synapse for analysis, and then taking up the results, making changes, integrating with CI/CD, and then monitoring those pipelines. So all these things is what your data factory does. Right? It's a code-free ETL as a service, which means you don't need to know code, but everything is done through the GUI. So here we're talking about two types of communities which are getting benefited because of this tool. That is one, big data community, and two, you have relational database warehousing old school boys who used to do this data refining, right? So these are the two kind of people that will use this tool. What you see on screen here is a screenshot on how. Why isn't it loading? Hold on. Okay, let me give you a link directly. I should have posted the link as well, haven't I? Let me see. Okay, there's a link. Let's click on the link. See here, data factory, and this is the diagram that I've copied over there. Why isn't it showing up? Okay, basically it talks about all the steps that you will do to refine the data. And then see here, ingestion is the first step. Then we have talked about controlling the flow, data flow, scheduling the flow, and then finally we're talking about monitoring the data pipelines. How to connect and collect, how to transform and enrich, how CI/CD process is being integrated, how you're monitoring. All this is explained in this KB article. Like I said, if you're not dealing with data, then you won't bring this solution. Again, the main whole sole purpose of this module, there is no case study discussion here, is just to tell you that these solutions can be considered. This is just to give you a kind of sneak peek of all the different service offerings in Azure associated to your data. Then we have data lake. What is data lake? The term lake generally means a repository of water, right? This is a repository of data. You might have heard about Hadoop, right? Which is where you bring in data analytics again. So if you need a repository to keep your data so that this data can be fetched by analytical solutions like Data Explorer, Azure Stream, or Synapse, you go with Azure Data Lake. So it supports HDFS, it supports redundancy, it gives you massive scalable solution. The main purpose here is to store data irrespective of its extensions, gives you a cheaper solution, and then because it uses blobs behind the screen, we saw yesterday how blobs are cheaper than Azure files. And then what else? It gives you security because by default any data that you add in is encrypted, and then performance. All these are the benefits that you get with Azure Data Lake Storage. So how Azure Data Lake Storage works? First step is again ingestion of data. That's what we are showing you here. Add out data, which means irrespective of the type of extension of the data, we can ingest, which means we can use tools like Azure Data Factory or Azure Copy or Azure Data Explorer to ingest the data. And then it assess the stored data, which is basically a way to access your data in Storage Explorer or any standalone applications where you have GUI accessing your data lake storage. Then setting access control, which is where we are bringing in ACL and Azure RBACs. So all these things is what you bring in. Now you might ask me a question, in which scenario would I use data lake storage? If you have an application where you need data warehouse on the cloud for managing large volumes of data, go with data lake storage. Second example, when you need real-time data ingestion and storage space for this data, wherein, for example, if I'm talking about IoT Hub, where we said IoT device and IoT application can work together, and then if you want to have a separate data stream, you can bring in the data lake storage, which can ingest real-time data directly from an instance of Apache Storm or any solutions like IoT Hub, Event Hub, or Azure SD Insight. So that's what we have. That's one solution. Then we also have something called Databricks. So what is Databricks? This is a platform which brings big data and machine learning together. What do you mean by this? So basically, it provides three types of environments: Databricks SQL, Databricks Data Science and Engineering, and Databricks Machine Learning. So these three environments are here to help your developers to accelerate their journey towards AI. So Azure Databricks provide data science and engineering teams with a single platform where they bring both big data processing and machine learning together. So like I said, there are three different offerings. One, if you just want SQL queries to run and then data to be stored in data lakes, we have something called Databricks SQL. So three offerings is what you will see. One is Databricks SQL. The other one is Data Science and Engineering. The third one is Machine Learning. So these are the three things which it offers. So this one is to run SQL queries on data lakes. This one is primarily a collaboration between data scientists and machine learning engineers. This one here is primarily end-to-end machine learning environment. So whenever you hear the term AI these days, it's all about some kind of analytics being performed for the data that you have collected and then taking action accordingly. And these tools help you do that. And Synapse is just a modern data warehousing solution from Microsoft, which allows you to refine your data and then analyze your data at large sums. So any customer who's asking for massive parallel processing, we go with Azure Synapse. This is where we'll talk about hot, warm, and cold paths. And I'm ending this whiteboard with this screenshot here. There are 20 plus different services which Azure offers just for the purpose of analytics. Which one best fits your need is dependent on your use case. This screenshot is just a quick snippet which talks about which service works best for your working scenarios. Now that we have got some inside knowledge about these products, let's just hit the deck, complete it, and get started with our discussions. So we already talked about what ETL is all about. Code-free ETL is what we call it, Azure Data Factory. It helps you transform your data movement and it helps you do it at large scale. So the main purpose of Data Factory, like we have discussed, is how do I orchestrate and operationalize your data, which means how do I refine the data so that I can get some meaningful insights from that particular data. Then we have talked about data lake. Data lake is a storage, cost effective, which allows you to store data. It's basically a big repository of data so that you can use this data for analytical purposes. So the first thing is, hey, this one sits in the cloud. Second one, it supports different types of files, JSON files, CSV, log files, or any other diverse formats. It can help you with real-time data ingestion and storage management. A quick comparison between blobs and Azure Data Lake. The first point here is Azure Data Lake is good for storing large volumes of text data. Good for storing unstructured data, such as photos, videos, backups, text-based data as well. For Azure Data Lake, if you want redundancy, you need to set up replication. Here, by default, depending upon your storage account, you can have a geo-redundant storage configured. Namespace support, hierarchical namespaces are supported. Here it doesn't because you can't nest your containers. Here I can do that. Hadoop compatibility is only available with Azure Data Lake storage, not compatible. Allows for more granular access not supported with Azure Data Lake. Design a data integration analytics with Databricks. What is a Databricks? It brings two parties together. So the parties here are big data and machine learning. Like I said earlier, 3 environments available: SQL, data science and engineering, machine learning. We already discussed machine learning is for end-to-end machine learning environment. Then we have talked about Databricks SQL, which gives you a quick insight on how your data is doing by running SQL queries on the data lake. Databricks Data Science and Engineering is basically a collaboration platform for data scientists and machine learning engineers. Synapse. This is an analytical solution. I call this as a modern data warehousing solution. So what does Synapse do? Hey, this guy uses Spark behind the screen, and then it allows you to implement something called MPP, Massive Parallel Processing. And then it allows you to run high performance analytics with ease. Historical data can be collected and can be analyzed. You can ingest data from external sources, transform and aggregate this data, right? So can I call this as a bridge between big data and data warehousing? Exactly. So it leverages the MPP architecture, which includes control node and a pool of compute nodes behind the screen. So this is where, if you look into the components, you will see something called SQL pool, Spark pool, pipelines, Synapse Link, Synapse Studio. Synapse Studio is your independent environment, IDE, which is generally used in order to get all the capabilities of Synapse. So you can use Synapse Studio to create your SQL and Spark pools. And then When we are talking about your SQL pool, it offers both serverless and dedicated resource model. You can use this always available, or you can use this as a serverless SQL endpoint. Synapse Spark Pool is basically your Apache Spark, which helps you process your data. Synapse Pipelines is to leverage the capabilities of Data Factory so that you can ingest the data. Synapse Link is a component that allows you to connect to Cosmo DB. So Studio itself is your development environment, independent development environment, which allows you to go ahead and develop an application that provides comprehensive facilities for your software. When to choose which one? Data Factory versus Synapse. We all know Data Factory, we said we are bringing ETL, code-free ETL. Synapse, we are bringing big data analytics and data warehousing together. So here, the data can be shared, cannot be shared. Provided with Azure Data Factory Template Gallery, the solutions, whereas here we are relying on Synapse Workspace Knowledge Center. Integration runtime supports cross-region data flows. It does not support. Integrated with Azure Monitor diagnostic logs are supported. Monitoring of Spark, not supported. Supported by Synapse Spark Pools, because this guy has its own Synapse Spark Pool, which supports multiple different programming languages like Python, Scala, SQL, and C Hash. So whenever we're talking about Synapse, so what does it help me with? So when you have a variety of data sources, you can use Synapse in order to get insights into all the activities associated with your application. Like, hey, what's happening? Why is it happening? What is likely to happen, and what needs to be done? So all these analytical types is what we support. So what's happening is known as the descriptive analytics. Why is it happening is known as the diagnostics analytics. What is likely to happen is prediction, and what needs to be done is more like prescriptive. So for prescriptive, we rely on your Apache Spark and Apache Synapse Link. And then for prediction, again, we are relying on your Spark pools, which is basically your Spark engine, which helps you with the analytics. And then with respect to why is it happening, we are relying on your SQL pools. So we are going to use the Synapse Analytics that enables you to interact with the data, explore the data in the SQL pools, and then take action accordingly. What is happening is basically a quick look into the data collected. And you can also make use of persistent data warehouse capabilities to perform any kind of analysis. A quick comparison between Synapse and Databricks is what we are highlighting. Again, Synapse is bridging the gap between big data plus data warehouse. This one here is big data plus machine learning. So sometimes you would see an overlap of services one can perform, but at the bigger picture, you will see that both are working at different levels, right? So Databricks, like we said, it's optimized to runtime with support for TensorFlow, PyTorch, and Keras machine learning languages, whereas here it's having a built-in support for Azure machine learning. Feature set, we rely on Spark environment. Here we rely on distributed T-SQL system. Reporting, Azure Databricks connection available in Power BI. Here, Power BI directly from Synapse Studio is integrated for fancy dashboards. So like we saw hot, cold, and archive tiers for your data, similarly we have hot, warm, and cold data paths. So any frequently changed data is always known as hot. So when processing or displaying the data in real time is what we call it as hot data path. Warm data path is a batch, right? Which means it's not real time, but it's a recent subset of data. Cold data path is rarely used. This data is mainly used for compliance or legal reasons. And this is generally used for long-term analytics and batch processing. Then we have data stream, which is a real-time analytical solution which provides you insights into your telemetry data. Hey, what's really happening in your environment? Is everything secure? If these are the questions that you're thinking of, then your stream analytics comes into play. It not just analyzes them, but also helps you deliver derive actionable insights. A simple example where I've seen stream analytics into action is in the USA, most of the transportation is controlled by the trucks, right? So they have these IoT devices connected to the trucks, which tells them how much time does it take for the trucks to reach the destination. And this way you can manage your the term, I forgot the term, they call it, the term is as well with transportation, but yeah, in simple terms, it helps you monitor data streams for these trucks and then create pipelines and then understand these pipelines to data streams, which help you change over time. So in other words, can it also process event processing? Yep, it can do that. Remote monitoring, predictive maintenance, real-time analytics, all these are the capabilities of stream analytics. And that, my friends, brings us to the end of the integration part. I just gave you a quick run through, but like I said earlier, each of these topics are discussed in separate courses. For example, if you're a developer, we have DevOps related courses wherein these solutions come really handy to be integrated with your application. But these are just a bird's eye view to tell you that these solutions can be integrated. So there is no case study for just that, right? So what we're going to do, I'll just give you the case studies for day 3, AZ-305. So today we discussed about application, access, logging. So logging needs more, so it's an optional one. So I'm just going to close this. If time permits, after networking, you can think of logging. So I think we have 2 for tomorrow. We don't have anything for BCDR and migration. Let me just open it. BCDR is empty, migration is empty. So these are the 2 case studies today. The first one is going to be your application. The second one is going to be your IAM. So give me like 5 minutes. I'll export the whiteboard. And like yesterday, I want somebody to step up and take the lead. These are the 2 case studies which we are targeting. So case study number 1 is designing your application architecture. Case study number 2 is designing your IAM solution. So these are the 2 ones. We don't have one for your data integration. So if you see here, data integration is empty, so we don't have anything there. So yeah, let's take a small break. The time right now is 3:08. Let me bring up the timer again.